All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be touching on the top prop bets for this Thursday slate. It's a 2-game slate. Let's go ahead and jump into it. But first, just real quick, a recap from the Hall of Fame game. Very much a tilting slate in general. We had a whole quarter get cut off, which really meant that some of the players that I want to be on a decent amount, they missed out on like 90% of their playing time. Jordan is a good example of that. Now, I am showing the underdog slip that ended up hitting. On the live stream, I mentioned that we ended up getting some massive prop line differences between pick six and underdog to the point where we need to be middling. Now, this does mean that the pick six prop bets missed, obviously. But overall, it ended up being a slightly profitable day. It was definitely annoying in the sense that it ended up being a slate that directly got impacted by just a full quarter of play getting called off. Now, that's just something that strangely happens at the Hall of Fame game. The field is just not as good. And it is preseason, so there is the potential that that could happen. But for the most part, I don't think we're all too worried about that this time around for the rest of the preseason games for the most part. And so let's go ahead and start with this first game. It's going to be Carolina versus New England. And we can see we're getting props for Plummer, Drake May, and Joe Milton. And when we look at the 9 to 5 discrepancies tab between PrizePicks and Underdog, we are going to notice that we are seeing a really high line for Jack Plummer. And the reason why we're getting a very high passing yard line for him is in simple looking at kind of the available quarterbacks that they have. Now, I'm using DraftKings to show you guys this. I'll show you guys this on the 9 to 5 Sportsbook tab as well. They're very thin at the quarterback position to the point where they had to bring in Jake Luton as well. And the reason why they're thin is because Andy Dalton is actually banged up. If we go to the injury report, he is banged up, and we already know that Bryce Young is not going to play. So going back into the depth chart, I think the assumption is going to be that Jack Plummer is going to play a majority of the snaps. He's going to play half of football. I think we can safely assume that. And they just signed Jake Luton to the squad. Now, he is someone that did play for them last year, was on the practice squad last year, but you got to remember, a different coaching staff. So although he's going to be familiar, Jake Luton, that is, familiar with the players and whatnot, not exactly familiar with the coaching staff. He was with the head coach in Seattle for like a year, but for the most part, I do think we expect Plummer to at least play a full half. I could see him getting a drive or two into the second half as well. And so the assumption is that he's going to be on the field a lot. And so obviously if he's doing that, he's going to be throwing a decent amount. Now, he has to average like 67 passing yards per quarter to get this over if he does only play a half. That is kind of a big number for Jack Plummer, sorry. And so I don't know, I think I'm more on the side of potentially wanting to do the under for him passing yards. And so I think I'm more inclined to do that here on something like Underdog, just because that's a very high number. And the New England Patriots, we haven't gotten confirmation of any of their starters sitting. I think actually most of the starters are expected to play a series or two. And so if that does happen, you got Jack Plummer going against the starters for a series or two, that probably is not going to mean good things for him, especially if Jack Plummer is not going to have a lot of the starters available for him. And so let's actually finish off this injury report here for the Carolina Panthers because it's huge. And so what you guys will notice is that they have 3 tight ends that are going to be missing in this game. So they did recently sign preseason NFL DFS studs Jacob Hollister and Jasper Horsted. And I'll get into that in a second why that's important. But those 3 tight ends are going to be out. You got some linemen out. Cam Sims, who's a decent receiver, he's going to be out. And then Leggett, their rookie, is going to be out as well. Rookie receiver. And so that does kind of lead them thin across the board receiver-wise. Smith Marset is someone that's talented, is someone that consistently gets hype out of camp, and he's still getting hype out of camp this year. And then you look at Jonathan Mingo. Apparently, he's been having a good camp as well. And then Jalen Coker is someone that has been getting a lot of hype out of camp. Now, I want to show you guys the depth chart as well here. They kind of, I don't want to say they go deep at running back. They have 5 running backs. I wouldn't call that deep at all, actually. And the question is Chuba Hubbard going to play? Jonathan Brooks, we know, is not playing. Is Miles Sanders going to play? And so I think the assumption is that Blackshear is going to play a lot. And actually, they do go deep. Sorry. That's right. We had this other tab here. Mike Boone and Dylan Johnson there as well. And so, yeah, it's kind of a guessing game for the running back position for them. And then we look at the tight end position. And again, I think this is important to point out. They have Jordan Matthews, the former Eagles receiver. Felipe Franks, the former, if you want to call him a quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. And then they added on 2 tight ends that are honestly at this point probably the 3rd best tight ends on the roster. Obviously, Sanders, these 3 players are all developmental. Sanders just being a rookie. And so let's look at some of these props. So we got Franks at 12.5 rushing receiving yards. And that's going to be the same on Prize Picks as well. Personally, I don't feel the need to target him at all. I will say he is a former quarterback. Maybe they give him some sort of random weird look at quarterback. Maybe. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. I don't want to touch that line for him. And so Sanders is definitely the most interesting of the bunch. But his playing time to me is very much rooted in how much they are concerned about the injuries to those other tight ends, to those three other kind of starters for them. Are they actually really banged up or not? Because if they're not that banged up, it does make sense to get the rookie tight end a lot of playing time in this game. Like, these are good quality reps for someone like him. And so if he's going to be on the field a lot, and this is a situation where we might get an indication from the coaching staff, maybe closer to the game going live, I could see wanting to bet on his over. But right now it does feel like the correct line. Like, in my head, I always kind of naturally try to do my own lines, and that's where I would put him at, because it makes sense. And so from there, let's just look at some of the other prop bets that we were getting for the Carolina Panthers here. So looking at it, guys, Mike Boone, again, 32.5 rush and receptions. That seems like a lot. And same thing for Raheem Blackshear as well. Kind of seems like a lot. I guess I'd be more on the side of wanting to bet the unders for those two. And again, let's look at Prize Picks. And I kind of hate that Prize Picks and Underdog do this just for example purposes, because then we can't use the discrepancies tab as much as I would like to, where we're just comparing the prop line differences there. I get why Underdog does it. I don't get why Prize Picks is not including receiving yards in there with those players. But yeah, I don't feel like I want to target those two, just simply because it does make sense for them to get a lot of playing time. If you get Mike Boone going up against a bunch of backups, I'd be kind of okay with that. But again, Carolina does go somewhat deep in this game. If we get news that Sanders and Chuba Hubbard are definitely going to be out, maybe think about them if the lines don't change. I just don't want to go crazy with that. And so that kind of just leaves us with the Carolina Panthers receivers. And if I had to choose, I would do Smith Marset for over his receiving yards. If I had to choose one, I also don't mind Mike to get over his receiving yards as well. If you guys are someone that thinks Jack Plummer is actually going to have a good game, I think that's a decent stack and opportunity right there. Smith should be playing a decent amount with Jack Plummer, and so should Mike there. So I wouldn't mind those two like in a stack, but obviously you'd probably be chasing a little bit more on Prize Picks where there are slightly reduced prop lines. And just real quickly, guys, as we jump into the New England Patriots, I want to point out that this is projected to be a low scoring game. Now, yes, for the Hall of Fame game, that was projected to be 31.5 points. They were at 31 points at halftime. So it is a guessing game for sure. But looking at the injury report for the Patriots, they're pretty healthy for the most part heading into this game. And so we're not going to get any like clear, distinct advantages just from an injury report or anything like that. Demario Douglas, we are expecting to sit. Kendrick Bourne, we already know is going to sit. Looking at the depth chart, I'm just going to have this up while I talk about the news. It did sound like the starters are all going to play. So when we look at the quarterback position, Jacoby Brissett did get a lot of work yesterday or today in practice. I'm recording this Wednesday night. He got a lot of work in practice, which typically means like when they get more work, it's not typical game prep. That typically means they're not going to play or play that much. So he does have the potential to sit. The expectation is that these starters do get about a series or two. And then I think it's just like Drake May gets a quarter and a half, Joe Milton gets a quarter and a half, Bailey Zappi gets whatever playing time is left over. If you guys have been following along, you've noticed that Joe Milton has gotten a decent amount of hype out of camp. He's a guy that has a big arm as well. And so I kind of expect Drake May to throw a lot of checkdowns and then maybe Joe Milton to air it out a little bit more. And so we look at Drake May and his, passing yards. It's a low number, 63.5. Now, if he does play a quarter and a half, again, kind of just using Jack Plummer as an example, if Jack Plummer only plays 2 quarters, that's about 67 passing yards. Okay. And so again, that's a big question of, is he going to play 2 quarters? And I think he will, but he has the chance to play more. Drake May, I don't think it's expected that he's going to play 2 quarters. He's going to play a quarter and a half though, most likely. I'm assuming just based off the reports. That kind of tells me maybe we could bet the over there. But then we look at someone like Joe Milton at 56.5 for his passing yards. That also seems to be extremely low as well to me. And then we look at his passing yards on Underdog, and it's at 50.5. Guys, I think that's a good buying opportunity there because, again, I think the chances of him airing out the football are great in this game. And so that's kind of my starting point. And I kind of hesitate to say that this is preseason NFL DFS. It is very much news-orientated. But again, given the information that we have, I think that's a solid bet to bet the over. slight middling chance, 6 yards difference should not be happening. And so I did want to call that out. Now, I do want to refer back to the depth chart here as I jump into the receivers, into the pass catchers here. So they kind of go deep, if you will. They got a lot of young talent. Tyquan Thornton returned to practice this week, yesterday. And again, I'm recording this on Wednesday night. Apparently looked good as well. Remember, they have KJ Osborne there. Jalen Rager's still there. Keyshawn Booty, I think that's how you say his name. Apparently, he's been having a good camp this year. Now, last year, he was getting a lot of hype out of camp as well. So how do we truly gauge that? We don't know. We really don't. The player that I'm most interested in is actually Javon Baker. Okay, he's apparently kind of been the star of camp as well as Jalen Polk. And then I'm kind of curious about Juju Smith as well. But in terms of players that we can bet on, we got Polk, Bell. I'm not touching Bell, guys. He's a tight end, not touching him. But Polk, Baker, and Juju. Okay. If Juju plays a lot, it's kind of one of those, you know, in basketball, how there's kind of like the old man game, if you will, where like, if you guys have ever played any pickup games with or even against your dad or whatever, the old man game, you know what I mean? And so I think that could happen with Juju, where he just kind of knows how to get open, knows the soft spots and defenses, and gets open that way. We're not expecting a massive game from him, but like if he has a good game, it wouldn't be shocking to me. And he is someone that is currently playing for his NFL career. Now, I don't want to bet on that. I feel like that's just guessing to get lucky. I do like the idea of betting Javon Baker for over his receiving yards. Again, a little bit of a middling opportunity here. 24.5 is his receiving yards on PrizePicks. We go to Underdog, we're going to see that his line is set at 20.5 rush plus receiving yards. And I actually think that's kind of big. Guys, Javon Baker is basically Jaden Reed. I'm not even joking. Now let's just pop up some camp clips. Now, these drills, these individual drills, are always favor the receivers. So like you should be able to cook like he is, but the fact that he's cooking that much is definitely a little bit eye-popping. Here's another clip that really displays his athleticism. I don't think he catches it. I don't think he gets 2 feet in bounds, but good athletic catch. And I will admit, this might be a little bit of confirmation bias. He is someone that I did like in the draft process as well. He is someone that I like, though. I mean, this line is definitely too low. Then if you wanted to bet on Jalen Polk for his over, you would do it on Underdog. PrizePicks, it's a little bit too high. Don't need to go there. All right, so what we're looking at so far is we got 2 bets. I like Joe Milton over his passing yards, as well as Javon Baker over his rush/receiving yards. Again, he might have a chance to get maybe, I doubt they would do it in the preseason, maybe a carry though. And so I like that a little bit better on Underdog. Let's go ahead and jump into the next game. All right, so the second game that we have is going to be the New York Giants versus the Detroit Lions. Again, another low-scoring game, especially compared to the other preseason games on the slate, 34.5. Now, I'll start with the Lions. They're kind of the more fun team here. Injury report, we're not going to get much out of it, but we did get confirmation that the starters are not going to play. Jared Goff is not going to play. Let me pull up. Actually, I won't. I did do a NFL DFS video, which was a much bigger deep dive. Basically, we got confirmation from Dan Campbell saying that he wants a lot of these players that he considers projects to get playing time. And so when I think of that, I'm thinking of all these developmental type players, and that was Hendon Hooker. And so he is someone that I do expect to get a decent amount of work in this game, and they're probably going to get a good look at him. And I'm very confused as to why we're seeing Hendon Hooker at a lower prop line than Jack Plummer, because the situation is exactly the same. And so we look at Hendon Hooker at 111.5 passing yards. That is extremely low. And I kind of get it, I guess, a little bit. You had Plummer with a little bit more of a pedigree in terms of passing in college, but this is 56 passing yards per quarter. That doesn't seem to be that much. And so I am much more inclined to run this over, because chances are he's going to play a lot. Now, Nate Sudfeld is the other quarterback on the roster, and I do need to mention him. He is someone that has kind of been a preseason stud. I don't really think this is a battle for the QB2 spot, but at the same time, they're going to want to get a good look at Hendon Hooker, and so I could see Nate Sudfeld just playing maybe a quarter and a half, and then letting Hendon Hooker finish the game. And so that's kind of my move, is probably to bet the under more with Hooker here. And then from there, let's talk about kind of the pass catchers. And so we do have a lot of pass catchers on this slate for the Detroit Lions, a lot. They're not that banged up. If you guys watched the DFS video, I don't know why, but I was calling Fontaine. I've been doing preseason NFL DFS a lot. I think there was another player with his name, but if you guys watched the NFL DFS video, apologies for that. I do a lot of videos on a lot of different sports with a lot of different players that most of us have never heard of, to be fair. So apologies for that. Weird name to screw up though, right? the player that I do like is going to be Antoine Green, who Antoine Green was someone that last year preseason was getting a lot of hype. And he was able to produce a little bit last preseason as well. What we did see, though, from the last preseason for Detroit is a lot of their production was spread out, thus a little bit random. Now, we did get some sort of indication running back wise as to who we could trust. But in terms of this slate, I don't know if that's exactly true. And so I will say I do like Green. I mean, we all like Green. That's why we're watching this video, right? Stupid joke. I don't know if I need to bet him, if that makes sense. That is a high line. I would say 27.5 receiving yards. It doesn't take much. Logically speaking, again, it does make sense for him to get some reps. I just don't know if I will be running out the over here. I don't know if I want to recommend that to you guys. He's someone I'm definitely getting action to in DFS as well, for what that's worth. From there, we do have a tight end prop, James Mitchell. I kind of do expect him to get that over. Again, though, do I really want to recommend that for tight end? I don't think I do. I don't. 15.5 on a tight end. It is a little bit random production. So let's go ahead and jump into the running backs. Now, for the running backs, it is interesting. Let's just put it that way. So they have been a team to kind of feature a running back. What I mean by feature a running back is they'll give a running back around 9 to, let's say, 12 carries. That's happened under Dan Campbell. I think it's on purpose, to the point where they don't want, and other teams do this. The Patriots were notorious for doing that. The Baltimore Ravens do this all the time. You don't want to get your starting running backs injured. They're the position that gets injured the most, right? And so wouldn't it be surprising to see one of these backup running backs get a lot of work? But are they, like Bam Knight, if he gets a lot of work in this game, I could see him having a good game. And same thing with Vake as well, where he's someone that has gotten a little bit of hype out of camp. I kind of expect him to have a good game. There are two players that can catch the ball in the backfield, so I'm a little bit surprised that their underdog lines are kind of as low as they are. So again, if I had to choose, I'd probably be going more on underdog, especially with Bam Knight. I'll just call him Zonovan Knight just for clarity here. He had a nickname when he was with the Jets. They called him Bam Knight. But again, maybe feels like we're forcing it a little bit there. It would make sense for them to get carries. But let's go ahead and jump in now to the Giants. And so real quickly for the Giants, we aren't getting any props for them just yet because, well, we haven't really got any indication of what the playing time is going to be. My assumption is going to be kind of what we have seen in the past, which is that it's going to be a lot of Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. We might not even see Daniel Jones start, but that is why we are not getting those props, because it could be a half of Drew Lock and it could be a half of Tommy DeVito. Again, it makes sense why they're not giving us the lines just yet as I'm recording this. Now, I do want to call out a couple of backs here. So Dante Miller has been someone that I liked, basically off of some of the camp videos that we've been getting. And he's a small, quick back. And here's another clip that will kind of just show his kind of separation that he had on an end zone. We don't really see much in this clip, but it does kind of show his speed. And so he is someone that, if we get props for, I might be interested to bet on him. And that's partially going to be rooted in the fact that they don't have too many running backs. They got Eric Gray there, who some people are excited for. I'm not too excited for. Jacob Sailors, who he had a good, what was it? Is it called the UFL now? Whatever, the Summer Football League. Tells you how much I watched that. He was good there. Then you have the other rookie, Tyrone Tracy Jr. I do think we'll see some of really all four of these, but I think the most logical thing is Tracy and Eric Gray kind of get a lot of work in the first half, especially probably Eric Gray, who's been there. Then I think we're going to see a mix and match of these guys. So again, it does make sense why we're not getting props for those guys just yet. But assuming the lines for Bam Knight and Vake are about, and even really these ones as well, I would assume though the lines that we're going to get for the Giants running backs are going to be about the same as these ones. And again, if I had to choose, I would maybe want to go with Miller. If it was like at 20 rush receiving yards, especially on underdog, I would want to do that. But again, we don't have that, kind of just pure speculation. And then receiving wise, it does seem to be kind of a crapshoot, honestly. They have a lot of players there like Isaiah McKenzie and Gunner, who are there to be special teams players who can contribute if needed at the receiver spot, but you don't want to depend on them. Tight end wise, there could be some value there. Theo Johnson could get a lot of work in this game just because they're shorter at tight end, kind of banged up. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day. Do want to just mention that if you guys want access to that discrepancies cheat sheet or that sportsbook cheat sheet that you saw in this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. You guys get access to that as well as all the prop betting data for PrizePicks and Underdog, as well as fantasy golf data as well. That's included for $10 a month. If you guys are someone that plays NFL DFS, there's a lineup builder that's included with that for preseason NFL DFS as well. If not, that's fine. And if you guys have never signed up for Underdog and you want to, take advantage of those props that we have. Just make sure to use the promo code 905 when you do that. That's a good way to help support the channel. All right, so with that, let's go on and get into the bet of the day. All right, so the bet of the day is going to be an underdog. Again, we are just getting a better edge there right now, specifically with these top three. And if you guys are just betting on underdog, these would be the three I'd run out, okay? And so I do want to make that distinction. Like if I really wanted to dial in a bet of the day, would be these three, but I did want to do a 5-slip bet. If you guys don't want to do that, run this 3-1 out there. And so Javon Baker, Joe Milton, again, we are gaining a decent prop line difference between those two as it sits right now. I still think I'd be fine running out their overs as long as it doesn't get too crazy. Again, the reason why I like this prop bet with these two for their overs is because it makes sense for them to get a decent amount of playing time. I think Milton would get a 1.25. Javon Baker has a chance to get a 1.25. And I think these two specifically will be on the field together as well. And so that's something I do like. Now, if you guys don't like these two prop bets, that's fine. You can bet the under on PrizePicks because, again, we are getting a decent prop line difference for those two players. And there is some correlation there. Then Hendon Hooker as well. So just comparing this line to the Jack Plummer line, these two players, Hendon Hooker and Jack Plummer, should probably play about the same in this game. Now, Jack Plummer, we could get confirmation or news that he's going to play basically the full game. Then we might want to adjust. Hendon Hooker as well. But as it sits right now, they're both should get at least a half of play. And so I kind of look at them as they should have about the same value then. And again, Jack Plummer's line on PrizePicks is a little bit lower than this. So if you guys are someone that wants to bet is over, it was at like 130.5. It's always changing, just as FYI. So I do like that. And then I wanted to toss an Anton Green because honestly, it's more of a DFS call out. Like I think he's going to be a good DFS play, but I wanted to make this a 5-slip bet. And so that's what it's looking like for the slate. That's going to be all for this video, guys. I will be doing a live stream again tomorrow evening, so be on the lookout for that. It'll be about an hour before the slate locks. I'll be talking about props and NFL DFS. If we have any middling opportunities between probably underdog and pick six, I'll be calling that out on there again as well. We got a lot of slate breaking news during that live stream as well, so it'll be big to touch on that and take advantage of those potentially slate changing news items that come in. All right, thanks for watching. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.